Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another live stream. Today we're talking about interpersonal relationships and dynamics in recovery. This is a weekly session that I do with Lario Botha. Hi, Lario. Thanks very much for doing this and for
Hi.
joining in. Um,
Biggest pleasure.
cool. So interpersonal relationships and dynamics in recovery. So, in the previous live video, we discussed enmeshment, and today we're going to be discussing rebuilding of trust with family members after rehab. Okay. So, I just want to quickly say if you guys are watching on the My Rehab Cafe group, if you want to remain anonymous, you just don't post any comments for the first 10 or 20 minutes, so because we are going to be on public platforms. So we're on the My Rehab Helper profile, which is a public platform, the ARC Facebook page, and we've been given permission to broadcast to the Benoni Moms group as well, which is quite cool. And I think this is a relevant topic for anybody on that group that might have a loved one that's got an addiction problem, or that might want to know more about this kind of thing. So the first 10-20 minutes, we're going to be on the public platforms, and then I'm going to cut the feed to those platforms, and we're going to go exclusively over to the My Rehab Cafe group. And if you want to know more about how to become part of the My Rehab Cafe group, you can send me a WhatsApp. I'll post a banner here. You can send a WhatsApp to my number, and I'll give you more details on how to do that. And if you want to engage with Lario or myself, if you want to ask any questions, feel free to post a comment asking a question, and we'll do our best to answer it. So with all of that, Lario, I'm going to hand it over to you if you want to maybe sort of start the process, and we can field some
All right,
questions,
certainly.
hopefully. Cool.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ryan, and welcome everybody. I hope you're keeping warm on this specifically cold day, especially in Benoni. Yes, so like Ryan said, please, guys, this is a discussion, group that we're having, so we do need your guys' interactions and comments as well. A lot of you who have attended my group therapy sessions at ARC specifically would know that once I start talking, I can ramble on. So I'm definitely going to try engage you guys as much as possible. So last week we had our discussion on enmeshment in family relationships, and the topic kind of went towards over-controlling behaviors from the family side post-rehab. A lot of my patients and people on the discussion group said, that's something that they often struggle with, is the family members' way of handling them or navigating their recovery post-rehab. We said at the end of the day that we need to take into perspective also where the family is coming from, So at the end of the discussion, I said, it's important to differentiate between when it's really enmeshment and over controlling or manipulative type of behavior, and when it's the family's natural response to their anxiety regarding what actually happened in active addiction. So I think it's important that anything like this that you're going to approach with the family, that there's some form of a process involved. So it's important to not try and just kind of go into this blindly and impulsively. Sometimes, the patients would be quite eager to get going with rebuilding and mending relationships with the family members. But it is often important that you take a step back and you basically strategize first. You really take, identify some steps that you want to follow. So I think one of the biggest first steps to take is maybe to give the family a space, a contained, safe space in which they can verbalize what they've gone through, where they're at, what feelings they're experiencing, questions they might have, so that so let me give an example. That is something you can ask your treatment team member to do, is to sit with the family and get some perspective on what they're experiencing and feeling, and for that information then to be given back to you in a feedback session. That often helps you prepare a lot better in terms of where to start the whole process with the family. Ryan, I don't know if you have any specific suggestions in terms of, we'll get to the different steps, but in terms of, what the best approach might be initially with the family.
So, Lario, I've been up since 3:30 this morning. I woke up to do a video with somebody from the States, and I actually had the wrong day, so I'm like I'm really tired, and my brain might not work correctly. But in terms of the process
No.
that you're talking about, are you talking about um, are you talking about the process of starting to regain trust with family members? So coming out of rehab and
Yes.
sort of, okay. Um, Look, from my experience, I know that it's incredibly difficult. I mean, um, I think we put our family members through a lot. Okay, and it's very difficult for them um, to really trust. And I think initially, the first couple of months, at the very least, we've got to be very very understanding. In the Alcoholics Anonymous basic text, it talks about. I think it's from the basic text. Talks about being an addict and going through the house like a tornado, and sort of like it's like a tornado going through the house, and the next day the house is all trashed, and the the alcoholic wakes up and looks around and goes like, well, what happened here? Who the hell trashed the house? But like he was, we get to be in a blackout while that's all going on, but the family members get the raw, brutal sort of like blunt force of it. And I think it can be very traumatic for family members. And so yeah, from my perspective, I think it's just important that anybody that has family members be very understanding about what it is that we put them through. We can't expect them to just sort of start trusting us from day one. It's going to take time here, and I think if nothing else, time is going to help with that. But I think you're going to go into a bit of detail about what else we can do. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So I think that's a valid point. Firstly, is that time. This is a process. It's not something that's going to be fixed overnight. Unfortunately, I always joke and say we're not that good. So we will probably not be able to iron out all the relationship difficulties that came from active addiction in one family session. But rightfully so, you mentioned about it being traumatic for the family. But I think in the same breath, often my patients would say, but you know what, it's traumatic for me as well. It's traumatic for me to have to go and relive all of those experiences, having to talk about it, having to put myself back into that shoe or into my own shoes, but in active addiction.
And feeling all of the guilt and shame that comes with that, eh? Yeah.
Yes. Because I think if you come to rehab, you're already so guilt-ridden, with guilt, ridden with guilt. And a lot of patients, over a time starts to feel better. And as they work in therapy through their different issues, they often feel, but you know what, enough talking about the past. I want to move forward. I want us to start talking about what's life going to be like after rehab. I don't necessarily want us to go and explore every single detail of what might have happened in the past. But I think it's valid, as Ryan said now, that we just stop for a second. And unfortunately, it's needed that we sometimes have to go back into the past for a little bit in order to understand what the family has gone through. Because obviously, the patient in any inpatient rehab setting would spend quite a lot of time in the program itself, exploring what happened prior to rehab. And at the end, they might be ready to move forward. But the family, remember, I always give the example that when patients book into rehab and they come to the reception area, I like meeting them at reception the first moment they book in, because when I see them, I almost see them wearing a metaphorical blindfold. And if you've ever walked with a blindfold, you would know you experience a range of emotions. You're unsure, you feel vulnerable, you feel in the dark, you feel anxious, lost. And obviously, as you settle into the rehab process, that blindfold comes off eventually. But the family members are standing behind you the day you get admitted or the day the person gets admitted. And I'm seeing the same blindfold on them. The only difference is we tell them, you have to go home with that blindfold. We will contact you when we're ready. So they often have to still drive home with that blindfold, sit another 10 or even 21 days with the blindfold on, which obviously intensifies a lot of their anxieties and their frustrations and their uneasiness, So that I often see when we start a family therapy process, whether it be in rehab or after rehab, the family come in with a totally different experience, or they at a totally different place than the patient, him or herself, which often leads initially to a lot of misunderstandings, frustration, because obviously the two people are on different levels at that time. So I think
Lario,
it's important for the yes.
Finish that thought. Sorry. Important for the
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just think it's important that we, like I said, we try and allow ourselves to go a bit back to where we left the family the day of admission and prior to admission, to try and understand what they've gone through.
So we've got a comment. I'm just going to put it up on the screen there. So agree with Lario. Giving family the space they need is important, and especially for someone that is really important, it is hard. But I've realized that the more I show that I'm really trying, the more I realize that they can really see the difference. Once again, actions speak louder than words. And I think that's an important
100%.
point. Yeah, Lario, do you want to go ahead and comment on that?
100%. And later we are going to get to that, is the practicalities. They say that the best apology is changed behavior. And I couldn't stress that enough. At the end of the day, the more they see, they witness the change, the more likely the trust, will build. And I think what's also so important, not that I want to talk ahead because I'm still getting to that, but is also that the person doesn't have to nag you, beg you to actually take responsibility for your recovery. The more they can see that you're taking your own initiative, you're acting proactively, will also illustrate to them that you're doing it for yourself, for the right reasons, and that you're really motivated to make it work, which I think is important as well.
Okay. So, yeah, carry on, Lario.
Okay. All right. So basically, I always ask the patients to give me a list of exactly what their expectations are the moment they step out of rehab from the family and the loved ones. And I often get answers like, I want understanding, I want support, I want empathy, I want independence, I want trust, I want financial support. And that's a whole grocery list of expectations that obviously the person in rehab is sitting with. A lot of the times, however, the reality is that the family, as we said, might not be at a place where they have the emotional capacity to fulfill all of those expectations. So as I said earlier, it might be important for somebody to sit with the family first, give them an open and honest space where they feel safe, where they can basically just say what they're going through and how they're feeling. Once you have that understanding, it might be important to move on to the apology. Now, that's a big debate that I often have in a group setting, because most of the group members will laugh when I talk about an apology, and they will tell me, Lario, I've apologized so many times, I can't even tell you. And they would tell me, I'm not going to apologize because my family doesn't believe in me anymore. They don't take it seriously. They dismiss it with a laugh or a shrug or an eye rolling. But you know what? It is probably still remains one of the most important aspects that you do need to tick off the list. I think it's more the manner in which people approach the apology that often leads it not to be as fruitful. So I think we as human beings, let's take substances out of the equation. I think when we have done something wrong and we apologize, we tend to do one of two things. We either only apologize for the behavior itself. So I'm sorry that I missed or I broke curfew, or I'm sorry that I screamed at you, or I'm sorry that I took money from your purse, but not really acknowledging the impact of that. Or saying, yes, I know I hurt you, or I know what I did was wrong, but so I always say, stay away from if, buts, or maybes. This is not the part in the process where you necessarily have to defend yourself or have to explain exactly why you did what you did. That will still come, because there's obviously value and truth in that. There's probably more to a person using the substances than just it being a choice. But at the end of the day, the apology should really be focused on the other individual. So I always say to them, you can make a grocery list of the things you think you might have done wrong. But if you say to a family member, I know I've hurt you, and I know you're disappointed, and I know I broke your trust, they would often turn around and say, but do you know how you hurt me? Do you know how your behavior affected me? So my advice would be, or a guideline, tip, tool, whatever, take it as you want, would be to say, it might be a better option to say to the family, you know what, I need to sit back. I need to really sit back and listen, because listening is probably your best first approach. Before you start talking or defending, is just say, listen here, I've been talking my heart out in the rehab process. You probably haven't had that space. Let me give you that space. I'm going to sit back, and I really genuinely want you to tell me, explain to me, show to me how my behaviors or the active addiction period, how that has affected you on an emotional level. And
can I interrupt, say, Lario? So, at what point do you think it's a good idea to sort of initiate these kinds of conversations? Because, I'm going to assume, never mind the anger, the anxiety, the frustration, and the sort of, the trauma that the families have gone through. That, I'm pretty sure they're going to be quite angry as well. And I can imagine sort of apologizing to somebody or initiating a conversation with somebody that's really angry could be quite a challenge. Any comments on that?
100%. I think that's a very valid point. Look, that is why something like a collateral session can buffer those a little bit. Is maybe, like I said, having your treatment team member speak to the family first alone, because that's often when most of the emotions come out. And I always say, as a psychologist, I can take it. You can throw your anger and your whatever onto me, because at the end of the day, that's going to help me understand where you're at, the family now. But on the other end also, yes, I think the patient definitely needs to be at a place where they are able to process what they're going to receive. Let's say it's day 3 or 4 in their rehab process. I mean, they're still themselves dealing with a whole range of emotions. I mean, it would probably be counterproductive or very premature to try and have a conversation like that on the 3rd day or 4th day of rehab. But once the patient has made sense of their own emotions, processed their own emotions, and have strategized or put plans in place on how they're going to deal with things, they might not always after that be the right time to approach them where you will get no intense response from them, if I can say it like that. I also often say that the emotional consequences is sometimes the only thing that you're left to face, because a lot of the times your family might have sorted out your debt or your written off car or your job, or those things. The family sometimes jumps in whilst the person is in rehab and sorts out those practical issues that was left in the aftermath. But the emotional impact, seeing your family experiencing that anger or that sadness, is not to add guilt, but it might be something that might make you think twice the next time. If we shield the person against that, then what consequence are they facing, if at all, if that makes sense? A consequence might be the wrong word, but you get what I'm saying.
So Lario, our time's up on the public platforms. So I just wanted to quickly, we're going to switch over to the private and associable Facebook group, which is the Marieb Cafe. If you guys are interested, the details are on the screen there. If you want to join that group. So yeah, thank you to everybody on the public platforms that have watched. Next week, Tuesday, we're going to be doing this again. And yeah, be sure to, if you've got any questions or anything like that, please post a comment. They'll come up on our screen. We can post them up and on the screen, and Lario and I'll do our best to answer them. So with that, we're going to move over to the Marieb Cafe. I'm just going to play a quick intermission video so I can do that without it being awkward. Thanks a lot, guys. Ciao. See you later. Cool.
Thanks, guys.